Clara had always enjoyed her quiet, predictable life in the small apartment she rented on the third floor of a modest building, where the hum of the city below was soft enough to feel like background music to her solitary existence, and she often spent her evenings curled up with books, tea, or just staring out the window at the streets that seemed to flow endlessly, people moving in and out of each other's lives while she remained a quiet observer, never fully part of anyone's story until one late afternoon when the golden light of the setting sun painted the room in soft amber hues. A knock at her door startled her, quick enough to make her heart skip a beat, and when she opened it, she saw Evelyn, her neighbor from the floor above, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups of tea, her dark hair falling over her shoulders in loose waves and her eyes reflecting something Clara couldn't immediately name, a mix of warmth, nervousness, and perhaps a quiet loneliness. And Evelyn's soft smile made Clara feel a curious pull she didn't understand at first, but that tugged at her heart, whispering that this visit was going to be different from all the ordinary interactions she had with people in her building. "Would you like to join me for tea?" Evelyn asked, her voice gentle, carrying a softness that seemed to invite Clara not just into her apartment, but into a moment that could change everything, and Clara hesitated for only a second before nodding, as though some invisible force was nudging her forward, guiding her toward a conversation she didn't yet know would mark a turning point in her quiet, predictable life. And as she stepped inside Evelyn's cozy apartment, the aroma of tea, fresh pastries, and a hint of jasmine filled the air, making her feel unexpectedly at home. The furniture simple but warm, sunlight streaming through lace curtains and falling across a small table where 2 cups had been placed carefully, as if the room itself had been waiting for this meeting. And when they sat down, Clara noticed how naturally Evelyn made space for her presence, sliding a cup closer and smiling in a way that seemed to acknowledge both the ordinary and the extraordinary all at once. And they began to talk, starting with small things, how their day had been, what books they were reading, how the little things in life sometimes felt heavier than they should. Yet there was an ease to the conversation, a rhythm that carried them forward without forcing words, and Clara found herself relaxing, letting go of the cautious walls she had built around herself. And for the first time in a long while, she felt seen, truly seen, by someone whose life intersected with hers in a simple, unexpected way. And yet beneath the lightness of their small talk, Clara sensed a quiet depth in Evelyn, a softness that hinted at stories left untold, a sadness wrapped in a gentle smile, and it stirred something inside Clara she couldn't quite name, a curiosity mixed with concern, as though she wanted to know more, to understand the layers behind those expressive eyes. And as Evelyn poured more tea, the conversation shifted subtly, the words carrying a weight of memories and emotions carefully held back from the world. And Clara listened, captivated by the honesty in Evelyn's tone, the way she spoke of things she had never shared with anyone else, and though the specifics were vague at first, the emotions were clear: longing, regret, moments of joy lost in time, decisions made and unmade, love that had touched deeply but slipped away. And Clara felt an unexpected resonance, a quiet echo of her own hidden desires and unspoken regrets, and the way Evelyn spoke made Clara ache in a way she had almost forgotten she could, a mix of empathy and a stirring she didn't understand fully. And as the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow that turned the room into a cocoon of warmth and intimacy, Clara realized that the moment they shared was more than just a friendly visit. It was a window into someone's soul, a glimpse of a heart willing to trust even when it had been hurt before. And Clara's own heart felt lighter and heavier all at once, as though absorbing both the beauty and the sorrow of what Evelyn revealed. And as Evelyn paused to sip her tea, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears, Clara noticed the faint tremor in her hand, the way her smile flickered, fragile but brave, and she felt an instinctive need to offer comfort, to speak, to bridge the distance between them with words that could ease the quiet ache in Evelyn's voice. And she opened her mouth to say something, anything, when Evelyn leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's something I've never told anyone," she said, and the words, though simple, carried a weight that made Clara's breath catch, as if the air itself had grown thick with anticipation, and she realized that she was on the edge of hearing a story that could change the way she saw Evelyn, and perhaps even the way she saw herself. And the sudden quiet that followed. The confession made the room feel smaller, the sunlight warmer, and the moment suspended in a delicate balance between fear and hope. As Clara leaned in slightly, her own heart beating faster, sensing that the ordinary life she had known could shift into something new, something emotional, something profound, and she wanted to reassure Evelyn, to tell her that it was okay, that she was safe here, and yet words seemed insufficient, inadequate to capture the gravity of what had just begun. And Clara realized in that instant that tea had become more than a drink, more than a casual meeting. It had become a conduit for connection, for intimacy without touch, for trust without demands, and she could feel the walls around both their hearts beginning to crumble gently, leaving space for something tender and undefined to grow, a delicate thread that wove them together in shared vulnerability, and she felt herself drawn to Evelyn in ways she hadn't expected, a mixture of admiration, compassion, and an unfamiliar attraction that was quiet, respectful, and urgent all at once, and Evelyn's eyes held hers, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist, replaced by the warmth of tea, the weight of unspoken stories, and the fragile yet compelling human desire to be understood. And Clara knew that the story Evelyn was about to tell would change something fundamental, not just in the way she viewed Evelyn, but in the way she viewed love, trust, and the quiet possibilities of life that arrive when least expected. And as Evelyn's voice broke the silence once again, softer now, almost hesitant, "I've kept this to myself for so long. I wasn't sure I could ever say it." Clara felt her pulse quicken, sensing the honesty and courage behind the words, knowing that this was more than a simple tea conversation. It was an invitation into the heart of another, and as she prepared to listen, to respond, and perhaps to reveal a piece of her own heart in return, the room held its breath with them, suspended between past and future, between pain and hope, and Clara realized that some moments arrive once in a lifetime, disguised in ordinary routines, in tea and quiet conversation. And this was one of those moments, delicate, emotional, and filled with the kind of intimacy that left a mark on the soul. And as the last rays of sun touched the lace curtains, casting dancing shadows on the walls, Clara leaned forward slightly, ready to hear Evelyn's story, to step into the unknown with her, knowing that what followed could shift the course of both their lives forever. And she felt the thrill of uncertainty, the pull of connection, and the quiet hope that sometimes, in the simplest acts of reaching out and listening, hearts can awaken. And that evening, with 2 cups of tea between them, Clara understood that everything was about to change. Evelyn's voice trembled slightly as she began to share the story she had carried in silence for years, her words gentle yet heavy with unspoken emotion, and Clara leaned in, her heart beating faster, sensing that every sentence would pull them closer. And Evelyn spoke of a love she had once held so deeply that it had shaped her entire world, a love that had started in the most ordinary ways. Shared walks through parks, quiet evenings with music playing softly, laughter that had lingered in their hearts, but had been complicated by circumstances neither of them could control. And as Evelyn recounted the details, Clara could see the way her hands fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve, the small tremor, betraying how much courage it took to speak aloud what she had hidden for so long. And she described moments of longing, days when she had waited for messages that never came, nights spent wondering if the choices she had made had led to lost opportunities, the ache of unspoken words echoing in her chest, and Clara felt a lump form in her throat, a mixture of empathy and a strange, growing connection, as if Evelyn's past and her own quiet loneliness were somehow intertwining, creating a fragile bond neither could yet name. And Evelyn's tone shifted, softening into bittersweet memories of joy, the way they had danced under the dim lights of a small cafe, the way he had brushed a strand of hair from her face, the laughter that had filled the air until it seemed impossible to breathe. But those joys had been fleeting, interrupted by misunderstandings, distance, and decisions that had seemed right at the moment but had left wounds that never fully healed. And Clara listened intently, captivated not just by the story itself but by the raw honesty and vulnerability in Evelyn's expression, the way her eyes glistened with a mixture of regret and longing. And she noticed the subtle way Evelyn's lips quivered when she tried to smile, fragile yet brave, and every detail made Clara ache with a tenderness she hadn't expected, a yearning to offer comfort without intruding, to be present without judgment. And as Evelyn recounted how she had often imagined what could have been, the dreams she had shelved in the quiet corners of her mind, Clara felt a pull in her own chest, remembering the love she had once let slip, the words she had never spoken, and the loneliness that had followed her through empty nights. And in that shared silence, a profound understanding passed between them, unspoken but undeniable, a recognition that sometimes hearts, even when broken, can still connect in ways that defy explanation. And Evelyn's story deepened as she described the heartbreak, the small betrayals of fate, the doors that had closed just as hope seemed to glimmer, leaving her with a quiet ache she carried in every smile, a weight Clara could almost feel pressing against her own heart. And yet despite the sorrow, there was a beauty in Evelyn's narrative, a poetry in the way she remembered the smallest gestures, the kindnesses, the fleeting moments of warmth that had made life feel luminous even when it was clouded with pain. And Clara found herself drawn into every word, every pause, every sigh, as if time itself had slowed, allowing her to exist fully in this intimate moment, feeling the contours of Evelyn's heart as if it were part of her own. And when Evelyn hesitated, taking a slow sip of the now cold tea, Clara noticed the vulnerability in her eyes, a quiet plea for understanding and presence, and she reached out instinctively, placing a hand gently over Evelyn's, a small gesture that carried the weight of comfort, empathy, and unspoken encouragement. And Evelyn's hand trembled slightly at the touch, but she didn't pull away, letting the warmth pass between them, binding their hearts in a delicate, fragile connection. And as the afternoon sunlight faded into a golden dusk, Evelyn continued, speaking of the choices she had made that had kept her from fully living, the compromises she had accepted, the moments she had let slip through her fingers because fear or doubt had held her back. And Clara felt the ache of recognition, knowing in her own life she had done the same, and it made the bond between them feel even more intimate, shared across experiences that mirrored each other in quiet, subtle ways. And Evelyn's words grew more reflective, pondering the what-ifs and the endless possibilities that life had offered. And then withdrawn, the silent grief of what could have been. And yet, within the sadness, there was resilience, a quiet strength that Clara admired, the courage to face her past, to speak it aloud, to invite someone else into the depths of her soul without pretense. And Clara felt herself both drawn to and inspired by that courage, a mixture of admiration, empathy, and something more, something tender and unfamiliar that made her pulse quicken and her thoughts swirl, as though the air between them had shifted into a realm of unspoken emotion, a place where hearts could connect without labels or demands, where simply listening was an act of love. And Evelyn's narrative touched on moments of longing that resonated deeply. The quiet nights when she had stared at the ceiling, imagining a future that might never arrive, the letters she had written and never sent, the conversations she had rehearsed in her mind, each one a bittersweet exercise in hope and despair. And Clara felt the tension of every word, the quiet drama of a life lived with both passion and restraint, the way love and loss could coexist in the same breath, creating a symphony of emotion that was almost palpable in the room. And as Evelyn spoke of fleeting happiness, the shared smiles, the small gestures of care, the accidental touches that had lingered too long in memory, Clara felt a flutter in her own chest, a mixture of longing, fascination, and an unexpected attraction that was tender, respectful, and electric all at once. And it was as if the story itself had become a bridge, carrying Clara across the river of Evelyn's past, allowing her to feel the joys and sorrows as though they were her own. And the intimacy of sharing these deeply personal moments created a space of trust and vulnerability neither had experienced in a long time, a cocoon of emotion where hearts could speak freely without fear, judgment, or expectation. And Evelyn's tone shifted as she shared the lessons learned, the growth that came from heartbreak, the resilience found in quiet reflection, the wisdom that pain can teach without diminishing the capacity for love. And Clara absorbed every word, feeling a quiet awakening in her own heart, an understanding that love and connection were not just about romance or joy, but about being present, truly present, for another human being. And in that moment, the ordinary tea they shared became sacred, infused with the weight of human emotion, the intimacy of shared vulnerability, and the promise of possibilities yet to come. And as Evelyn concluded her story, her voice a soft whisper of fatigue and relief, Clara felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of sorrow, empathy, and an unexplainable hope, knowing that the afternoon had changed something fundamental in her. A shift that was quiet, profound, and deeply romantic in its own subtle way. And as the light outside dimmed further, casting long shadows across the room, Evelyn looked at Clara with eyes full of trust and quiet expectation. And Clara realized that their connection had moved beyond the story itself into something unspoken but undeniable, a bond formed in the tender space between listening and being heard, between understanding and being understood. And the warmth of that moment, the intimacy of shared vulnerability, and the quiet, slow-burning attraction left Clara both exhilarated and nervous, knowing that the next steps could bring joy, complication, or heartbreak, but that some moments, once experienced, changed the course of life forever. And as the evening approached, the room seemed suspended in a delicate balance, filled with emotion, desire, understanding, and the unspoken question of what might follow. leaving Clara with a fluttering heart and a mind alive with possibilities, aware that she had stepped into a story that was bigger than both of them yet entirely. Theirs a story that had begun with tea and would continue to unfold in ways that neither could fully predict. A narrative rich with longing, tenderness, and the slow, inevitable pull of two hearts waking to each other in a world that had seemed ordinary but was suddenly full of quiet, profound magic. As the evening deepened, the soft glow of the lamps in Evelyn's living room seemed to wrap Clara and her neighbor in a cocoon of warmth and intimacy, the shadows dancing across the walls as if echoing the quiet flutter of emotions between them, and Clara felt a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation, knowing that what had begun as a simple tea invitation had unfolded into something far more profound, an emotional bridge connecting their hearts in ways she had never expected. And Evelyn, still holding the letters and photographs that had revealed fragments of her past love, began to share more of the memories, each one a delicate mix of beauty and heartache, the details of the places they had been, the songs they had loved, the quiet mornings spent in each other's company, all painted vividly in her voice and expression, making Clara feel as though she were walking beside Evelyn in those moments, experiencing the joys and sorrows firsthand. And Clara realized how deeply she had come to care for Evelyn, how her heart ached with empathy, how her admiration had grown into something tender, quietly romantic, and full of longing. And as they laughed softly over the small, joyful recollections, the room seemed to shrink around them, the air charged with unspoken feelings, the kind of subtle, quiet attraction that grows not from physical gestures but from shared vulnerability. And Evelyn, noticing Clara's attentive gaze, paused for a moment, a shy, almost imperceptible smile forming on her lips, and Clara felt a rush of warmth, a flutter of hope that perhaps this connection was mutual, an unspoken understanding that both hearts had been touched, that both had been awakened to feelings long ignored or buried. And Evelyn gently handed Clara one of the photographs, an image of her younger self smiling under the sunlight with the man she had loved, and Clara traced the outline with her finger, noticing the slight tremor in Evelyn's hand as she watched, a mix of nostalgia and longing, and the gesture brought them closer, the silence between them no longer empty but heavy with meaning, as if words were unnecessary. And Clara felt her own pulse quicken, realizing that something delicate, tender, and unspoken was blooming between them, a connection that was both emotional and quietly romantic, carrying the weight of trust, vulnerability, and mutual understanding. And Evelyn's voice softened again as she recounted the letters she had written but never sent, the words full of hope, apology, and longing. And Clara found herself absorbed, touched by the raw honesty, by the courage it took to reveal one's heart so completely. And she felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a mixture of empathy, attraction, and awe at the strength behind the vulnerability. And as the minutes turned into hours, their conversation meandered from memories to dreams, from fears to small confessions, from laughter to quiet sighs, each moment weaving them closer together. And Clara felt the room transform, no longer just a living space, but a sanctuary where hearts could meet without judgment, where emotions could flow freely, where connection could blossom naturally. And as Evelyn spoke of the lessons she had learned from lost love, about forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to open oneself again, Clara felt inspired, her own heart responding, understanding the truth of her words, feeling the stirrings of hope and desire she had long kept hidden. And the energy between them became palpable, gentle yet undeniable, a subtle tension that neither could ignore. And Clara noticed the way Evelyn's gaze lingered a little longer, the soft curve of her smile, the way her hands moved as if unsure whether to reach out or retreat. And in that hesitation, Clara felt the beauty of human emotion, the thrill of possibility, and the fragile intensity of two hearts awakening to each other. And Evelyn, sensing Clara's presence so fully, leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping to a whisper as she shared a hope she had long carried, a dream of finding connection, understanding, and perhaps love again. And Clara felt her own breath catch, realizing that this hope resonated with her own, that the feelings she had tried to ignore or deny were mirrored in Evelyn's words. And she responded with soft encouragement, a gentle smile, and a hand that brushed lightly against Evelyn's, a gesture that carried more weight than words, an affirmation of presence, interest, and care. And Evelyn's hand remained, tremulous but unmoving, and in that contact, a spark passed between them, subtle yet undeniable. And Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of excitement and tenderness, a recognition that something rare and beautiful was unfolding, something that began with empathy and honesty but had quietly blossomed into a romantic tension, full of promise and potential. And as they continued to talk, sharing dreams, fears, and the quiet yearnings of their hearts, the outside world seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a space of trust, intimacy, and possibility. And Clara realized that she had never felt so connected to anyone. The way Evelyn's vulnerability had invited her own to surface, creating a bond that felt both exhilarating and comforting, safe yet thrilling. And when Evelyn's eyes met hers, filled with both hope and hesitation, Clara knew that the moment had reached a delicate, profound turning point, a quiet realization that this meeting, this conversation, and these shared feelings could be the start of something extraordinary, a love that was patient, tender, and built on understanding. And as the evening shadows deepened, Evelyn placed the photographs and letters aside, her gaze lingering on Clara with an expression full of gratitude, anticipation, and something unspoken yet unmistakable. And Clara felt her own chest tighten with emotion, knowing that their connection had grown beyond simple friendship, beyond shared stories, into the realm of hearts recognizing each other, the silent, beautiful spark of mutual attraction and deep emotional resonance. And they sat together in quiet harmony, letting the silence speak for them, the unspoken words carrying the weight of longing, affection, and subtle desire. And as the night air cooled and the city lights twinkled outside the window, Clara realized that this ordinary evening had become extraordinary, a moment that would linger in memory, shaping thoughts, dreams, and emotions. And as she finally rose to leave, Evelyn's hand brushed against hers again, lightly, intentionally, a gesture full of promise, and Clara felt a warmth spread through her, a quiet joy, a flutter of hope. And as she walked back to her apartment, her mind raced with possibilities, replaying every word, every glance, every subtle touch, aware that something beautiful had begun, something that neither of them could yet define fully, but that felt inevitable and profound. And she knew that in Evelyn, she had found not only a confidant, but a kindred spirit, someone whose heart resonated with her own, and that the tea, the stories, and the quiet moments shared had opened a door to something deeper, tender, and romantic, a connection that promised to grow, to explore, and to awaken hearts in ways neither had dared to hope for. And Clara felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with contentment, knowing that this was only the beginning, that the story of them had begun in earnest, full of emotion, longing, gentle romance, and the beautiful uncertainty of two hearts meeting in the quiet magic of an ordinary evening turned extraordinary. And as she closed the door to her own apartment, the memory of Evelyn's smile, her trembling hands, her shared vulnerability, and the spark that passed between them lingered in Clara's mind, a soft, persistent echo of hope, intimacy, and the quiet awakening of love, leaving her with a heart full of emotion and a mind alive with dreams of what might come next. A story that had begun with tea but had blossomed into a connection neither would ever forget, a delicate, tender, and profoundly romantic bond, ready to grow as the days and nights unfolded, full of possibility, emotion, and the gentle thrill of hearts discovering each other in ways both unexpected and unforgettable.